This is Support is Sexy, episode 546, with Millennial business coach, Lena Elkins. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so happy to have you here. You know, it just would not be the same without you. And today we are welcoming our guest, Lena Elkins. And Lena is a millennial business coach. So that means she is a millennial herself, but she also coaches specifically millennials who want to launch their own businesses. She helps them turn those businesses into, ideas into businesses, and then move them on up to 6- and 7-figure businesses. Now, what I love about our conversation, and this is something I think about quite often now, finding your ideal client. It's almost like it's very much like a relationship, right? Finding the person that aligns with who you are, what you want to create, how you want to spend your time, and all that great stuff. As entrepreneurs, we're fortunate we get to choose the kinds of clients and people we want to work with. But we don't always seem to remember that. Sometimes we end up aligning with people who just are not the right fit for us as clients, right? So Lena and I talk about what she says are the 4 types of clients that we all come across, how to know your ideal client, and how to know when to walk away. Another thing I liked about what Lena shared, when she shared so openly, so I appreciate that. She also talked about this moment in her life when she not only had to step outside of her comfort zone, but take a leap outside of her comfort zone. And if you're in that space or you think you might need to do that or you want to do that, give this a listen. It might be time to leap outside of your comfort zone. All right, so I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. Without further ado, Lena Elkins. So, Lena, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Elayne. I'm excited.
Excellent. So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
You know, it's interesting. I wasn't raised in an entrepreneurial setting at all. My parents were not entrepreneurs, but it only occurred to me to become an entrepreneur once I was in the 9-to-5. And I realized, wow, this is really not for me. Up until that point, I really had no idea that there was even an alternative. So when I was in a 9-to-5, I started to pay attention, and Facebook groups at this time was really starting to grow, right? And these entrepreneurs were building Facebook groups to teach about starting online businesses. So that was my first ever exposure. And I thought, wow, there are other people out there who are in their early 20s who aren't working for this middleman, the boss. They're able to build their own businesses. They're able to build their own audiences, set their own rates. That's what I want to do. So that was the first time that I was ever even really exposed to entrepreneurship. And I jumped in with 2 feet just a few months later. So it happened pretty quickly.
How did your family or your parents you mentioned who are not entrepreneurs, how did they respond to you deciding to go this route?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. At this point, I had already done so many things that they never expected me to do that they were kind of used to me, like taking an unconventional path. But before this, I'm actually from San Francisco, California. And so I had already graduated college and moved to Tel Aviv, Israel by myself without having any family, without knowing the language, without having a community, with just having graduated college, so no work experience, by myself to the Middle East, right? And so I had already done all of these things. My parents were like, what is this girl up to? So when this came around, they thought, you know what, Lena, clearly you're doing your own thing. Let's just see what happens. I don't think that they actually expected much to come of it. But I know a lot of parents are very judgmental and very clearly not supportive of their kids pursuing entrepreneurial paths. My parents were never really like that. They just kind of silently assumed it wouldn't really work out. Let me do my own thing. And it worked out. So now they're pretty impressed.
So you grew up in San Francisco, you said, right?
Yes.
What was a young Lena like growing up in San Francisco before you moved off to Tel Aviv, where you are now?
Yeah, I was so mediocre. I was like not exciting. I was one of these kids who did okay in school. You know, I didn't really care. I did okay in sports. I did okay in drama or art or whatever it was. I was never exceptional at anything. And I pretty much quit everything that I did. So, you know, a lot of little girls start out taking ballet lessons and they move up to this and that. And I pretty much had quit everything. So I was really just not remarkable in any way. But at the same time, I think that the one thing that made me really unique as a child is that I loved people. I loved having conversations. And so with everybody, like everybody from the mailman to the guy who drove me to school every day, the bus driver, to my teachers, to my parents, I love just the human story. And so even growing up when I wasn't good in school, my teachers still loved me because I was the only second grader or whatever to ask them all their questions about their life story and their families and whatever. So I was not an exciting kid. No one would have ever predicted that I would take an entrepreneurial path or build anything remarkable. But everybody would say I've always loved people. And that's exactly, the core of my business today. So, yeah.
So at what point did you decide to move to Tel Aviv, or what was it about Tel Aviv that made you say, from San Francisco, this is where I'm going to set up shop?
Yeah. So I was about to graduate from college. I went to the University of Oregon, and I saw all of these other recent graduates around me who were really, really struggling to find an entry-level job, right? Because finding a job as a millennial today is not the same as it was for our parents, right? When they were recent college graduates or our grandparents. So they were either really struggling to find a job or they were trying to find internships, and they just all seemed miserable. It's like we had gone to school our whole lives up until this point for what? Just to have more anxiety and more stress, and what's the next step? So it just seemed so unappealing to me. And at the time, actually, my younger sister, Madeline, she was a soldier in the Israeli army. So that's the whole story within itself. But basically, if you really want me to break it down, like I can.
Break it down, Lena, break it down.
Okay. Some people are like, this makes no sense. But basically, so I was raised in an American Jewish family. That was the strongest point of our identity, I would say. We were being American Reformed Jews and also Zionists, right? So we were raised with this idea that Israel is the state of the Jewish people. This has really gotten deep. Like, I did not think we would be getting into this, but I'm just giving the background, sorry. So basically, being raised with that, I was raised going to Israel as a child, still not really knowing anybody there, not having family. My parents are like sixth generation American Jews, but I fell in love, right? And so did my sister. And this is a very common story for American Jewish kids. They're sent as teenagers, they fall in love. Maybe they end up taking a gap year there or studying there in college, but that's kind of what happened. So I studied abroad actually for a year in college in Israel. I was a Middle East studies major. I thought I would be getting into politics and a totally different avenue. But my sister as well, when she graduated high school, instead of going to college, decided to join the Israeli army, which is something that you can do as an American citizen. You can go, if you're Jewish, become a citizen of Israel, join the military, serve as a soldier, and do that whole thing. So you can imagine from my parents' point of view, who are very much so American Jews, not very connected to Israel, and now their daughter, who at the time was 18, is saying, I'm going to go to Israel and join the army. And especially during the time there was a war going on in Israel. And so my sister was actually fighting in this war. So basically, when I graduated from college, it was in the middle of this war in Israel. My sister was there. She was doing this thing. My parents were freaking out, meanwhile, from California, wondering what the hell is our daughter doing? I think that deep down, I thought, maybe I can go and make my parents feel a little bit better. I'll be closer to my sister. I'll be able to help. Why not? Israel's cool. Maybe I could find a job. I didn't really have a plan, but I knew my sister's there. She's doing this thing. Love my sister. I want to give my parents some peace of mind. I'm going to go to Israel and see if I can maybe build a life there. And I had no idea the immense number of challenges that laid ahead after that. But that was initially why I moved to Israel. I didn't think I would stay, but I stayed. I became a citizen, got my first ever big girl job, my one and only ever 9 to 5. Stayed there for about 10 months, met my husband at that job, and we got married back in June. He's Israeli, and we're still here. So,
wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. It's fascinating. Well, your sister is still in the army, the Israeli army?
She is not actually. She got out, I would say 2 years ago, and then she actually ended up moving back to the United States. So
now you're there and she's back in the United States.
Yep. And now my parents are freaking out about me while she's back. So, yeah.
Wow. At least you're not in the army though, right?
No, I'm too old for that. I remember I moved here when I was 21 and they're like, you're a grandma. We don't want you.
No. Oh my goodness.
I know.
Wow. So then when you first moved, I'm still fascinated by the story. When you first moved, did you, you mentioned you went obviously for your sister. Did you have any other family or anybody there that you knew of at the time?
Right. I had very distant cousins who are religious, very religious Jews. And so I didn't really know them. I had a good friend who was moving to Israel at the same time with me, actually. And she and we both moved there at the same time in the middle of this war. And we couldn't even afford to pay rent, like basic things. And so we lived in an immigrant absorption center outside of Tel Aviv. And that was our life for months there without family. We just my friend and I had each other and my sister when, she had time off from the army on the weekends. And that was it.
I was asking more about it because I think it's so interesting what you mentioned to us earlier, that you feel like you were sort of mediocre as a child, or you would start things and quit. And then to make this big move, even though you had a sister there and were going with your friend, it still seems like such a, I don't know, did it feel like something that was maybe in reflection a part of your personality to do something adventurous like that? Or was this a moment when you were really stepping outside of your comfort zone because you saw, like you said, so many of your friends in college kind of doing the same thing and not really amounting to anything? What was you say it's for your sister, but I'm wondering inside of you, what was the motivation to be like, I'm going to make this huge move somewhere where I don't really know anybody, where I have one friend coming with me, and really step outside of my comfort zone?
It's interesting. I'm only realizing this as you're saying it. I've never even thought about it in this way before, but sorry. And in some ways, it's almost like because growing up, I was not really remarkable. I don't think I was noticed. And I knew that I never really put effort into anything, that I think in my mind, I thought, and I also had two parents who were very busy career people. We had like nannies growing up and things like that. I think I always thought deep down, and I'm really only realizing this now, that maybe if I really wanted to be noticed and if I really wanted to feel significant in any way, I couldn't just do things halfway. I had to do things to the extreme. I had to do it all or nothing. And so I think maybe deep down I thought, well, if I just go and get a job like everybody else or get an internship or move back with my parents or whatever, no one's going to notice that, right? It's not going to be remarkable. I won't be building anything that's worth building. So maybe like the 21-year-old Lena, who at the time was also very insecure and recovering from a severe eating disorder that really took over my college experience. Maybe I was thinking, if I really want to be known, if I really want to be seen, then I have to do the extreme, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. This is like a therapy session.
Well, thank you so much for being so open and sharing your story. I think too, it'll help people who might be, maybe they, if not when younger, maybe now are sort of feeling either stuck or, like you said, just feeling like things aren't extraordinary in the moment. And things aren't always extraordinary. Sometimes they're just normal moments, but maybe a big shakeup, whether it's a move or a new opportunity or business or job or relationship or something to sort of shake things up and put you in a different circumstance where you are outside of your comfort zone, is the thing that just sort of changes your life, basically, as it seems like it did for you.
Right, exactly. It's kind of that shock to the system. You're so used to the same things, and you just need a big jump, a totally unknown, in order to gain a new perspective, and that's exactly what it did.
So what was the moment then that you decided to really take the jump into entrepreneurship? You mentioned that you had one job, 9 to 5, and then at what point did you say, I'm going to do this on my own?
Yes. So I had my one and only ever 9 to 5. It was a great love affair that lasted for about 10 months. It was an entry-level digital marketing, social media marketing role. And so I had done some marketing stuff in college for, Jewish campus organizations and things like that, but nothing formal. I never had any formal training, but I think if they saw me and they said, okay, this 21-year-old girl, knows how to use Facebook, so let's hire her for the social media marketing role. And they hired me, and it was really very much a learn-as-you-go job. And I was very fortunate, actually, at the time. While I was there, I had a mentor, somebody who was just a friend. So in Tel Aviv, there's a very big expat community. Lots of Americans live in Tel Aviv. And he was a fellow American from Southern California. And he was just a few years older than me, and he had figured out how to quit his marketing job and basically cut out the middleman and start bringing on his marketing clients on his own and able to really transform his life. And so kind of just from afar, as I was in this 9 to 5 and I was making very little money and I was dealing with all the normal things that people complain about, with the 9 to 5, I was seeing him do this. And I finally asked him one day, how did you do it? And slowly over about, I would say, a month, I just started learning from him. Okay, so this is how you put yourself out there. This is how you get clients. And it's interesting now thinking about it, all of the things he taught me, it's very low level organic marketing. These aren't things that today I practice or would teach my clients necessarily, but they were so simple that they worked right at the time. And so basically after about 10 months, again, my parents, everybody was like, stick it out for a year, get it on the resume, make that happen. I knew that I just couldn't do it anymore. I was fed up. And so I quit my job one day. I opened my marketing agency the next. And within 3 months, I was completely filled up in my packages that I was basically trying to sell. And I was mostly working at the time with Tel Aviv-based startups. So in Tel Aviv, it's also a very big entrepreneurial and startup scene. And at the time, there were all these companies, right, who were basically trying to sell to an English-speaking American market, but they didn't really speak English, right? And they didn't have the writing and the copywriting and the sales skills in order to do it. Whereas I came in, I had somewhat, some marketing experience. I was a native English speaker. I also did a lot of writing and blogging and things like that in college. And I was able to step in and bring them on as clients. And so that was basically the launch of our agency, which basically reached the multiple six-figure mark within a year. And only then, though, after a year, did I realize this is way too much. I'm a one-woman show. While I am technically an entrepreneur and I'm making my own money, I feel like I have a million mini bosses. And this isn't what I want to be doing anymore. And so simultaneously around that time, after it had done very well, a lot of my friends and kind of the expat community had seen me quit this job. I was suddenly making a lot more money and working for myself, and they were able to see what I was able to build. A lot of other millennials started coming to me and saying, how did you do that? I also want to quit my job. I also want to build my own business. And that's when I realized that I had this way of basically translating ideas and passions into actions and profitable businesses quickly. So that's when I kind of just started coaching and promptly with a few people. Suddenly I saw a bunch of people quit their jobs, start building businesses. It was awesome. And that is when Lena Elkins Coaching was born. And now that's what we've been with for over 2 years now. And it's just been the most incredible thing ever. It's just amazing.
I love that. Two things that you mentioned that especially stand out that I want to make sure people catch. One is when you first started, as you mentioned, you quit your job one day and started your business the next. It seems like, if not right away, eventually you looked around and sort of saw what the need was, where you were at the time. So people in Tel Aviv wanting to work with English speaking audiences or sell to English speaking audiences. They don't speak English. You do. You sort of have this insider way of being able to make that connection for people. So looking around at what's going on around you or in your space already, that you can serve this sort of developing community of entrepreneurs, et cetera. So for everyone listening, sometimes we think, I don't know what to start. I don't know what to do. How should I start this business? I mean, you coach entrepreneurs, so I'm sure you go through this too, sort of looking around like, well, what is working or not working around you, right? What could you do? But also, I love too that you shared with us how your business evolved over time, which is something else I think sometimes we are, and I've been here, sometimes you're afraid to make the change because you started as an agency or you started as a whatever, but then as you said, you might get to the point where you're like, oh, this way isn't working for me anymore, even if it's just as simple as, I don't like it, I want to do something else. Sometimes we think it has to be some big reason or moment or, some kind of big pivot, et cetera, different than, I don't like this isn't working, I'm going to do something else. Or as you said, people start coming to you, asking you for something else that feels more aligned with what you want to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think that both points you mentioned kind of fall into the same thing, which is just being in tune with what you need right now and really paying attention to what you need to do in order to feel more fulfilled in your business, right? And it's so interesting. So many entrepreneurs, and I'm sure you see this too, like they'll come to me being like, Lena, I really want to open this thing, or I want to start this, or I want to make this pivot, but I can't. But what's the point of starting your own business if you can't give yourself the permission to really listen to yourself and what you need and make those changes, right? And ultimately your clients and your community are going to be so grateful for that. And to the first point that you made as well, something I really want to emphasize is that I didn't know everything about marketing, right? I wasn't like the Beyonce of marketing when I decided to open up my own business and start getting my own clients, right? I was simply half a step of the people who I was trying to serve. I didn't have to be the best of the best. I just had to be a few steps ahead of the people, right? And basically be able to help them solve their problem faster than they could solve it themselves. And when you really look around, there are often so many different kinds of businesses and people who need you and your services right now, people who are right under your nose, people who are local, right? And especially for those of you guys, for your listeners who are digital nomads, who are travelers. If you are a native English speaker, you were born with such a blessing, right? There's so much opportunity there. So don't discredit the skills that you have, even if they don't seem like the greatest skills to you. And don't be afraid to just look around and simplify things. Don't overcomplicate, the client relationship. Realize that there are people in front of you who need you and who you can really help serve. If you only give yourself the permission to step into your skills and really listen to what those are.
And I think that's so great, Lena. I think that's so important for us as women too, to realize. I feel like, I don't know, I don't want to generalize men. I love the men that listen. I always say thank you to them. But I'm saying, I think women, for a lot of us, we think we have to have all the things in place or know everything before we start anything. And I love what you said about sometimes people just need a person who is a few steps ahead of them or who has been through something that they're trying to do. Like the people who came to you, you were able to quit your job and build this successful business. People want to come to you to learn how to quit their job and build a successful business. It's not like we want to come to you to find out all the other things outside of that maybe you haven't gone through yet or someone else has, et cetera. So I love that idea, just what you said of recognizing that people are coming to you for a reason.
Right, exactly.
Now, on your website, I noticed you said, quote, "It took me a long time to realize that literally anything is possible, especially in business, if you simply choose to look outside of the box, stretch your beliefs, and become hell-bent on getting your result." End quote. So I'm wondering for you, what was the turning point for you that made you realize that anything is possible, especially in business? Was there something that happened that made it sort of click for you?
Yeah, definitely. So many moments. And I feel so grateful. But I think what I ultimately realized after a lot of experiences is that I was the source of my own limitations and no one else was. Nothing was going to stop me, right? And when I realized that I was the one getting my own way, then you're able to remove those blocks and really push forward in a way you wouldn't have otherwise. And so I think that the first time that I really realized this was when I decided that I wanted to hire my first coach. So I had this digital marketing agency for about a year. It had done very, very well. But I was up to my ears in client work. I was just drowning. And I was also drowning in my own stories about like, oh, poor me. I brought on too much. Look at how much things suck. I couldn't make money on my own and actually be happy. Like all these deep-rooted stories that I had attached to this experience that were preventing me from getting out of it. And so, as I mentioned, a lot of people started coming to me and saying, Lena, how did you decide to launch your own business? How did you do this? What were the steps you took? All of that stuff. And so I started coaching them promptly. But that's when I realized I want to make a business out of this. How do I sell this? And that was something that I didn't know. And I realized what got me up until this point was not going to get me to the next level. So I had gotten from 0 to 50. Great. Now I needed to get from 50 to 100. And I didn't know how to get there. And while I started in the beginning to bring on some clients on my own, I didn't feel like I was charging as much as I really deserved. Again, as a woman, I didn't feel like I really knew how to scale. I didn't know how to implement marketing strategies that weren't just organic, what I'd used before, but things that were going to be new and innovated and automated. And so I decided to hire my first coach. And I'm actually writing a book right now. And it's funny that we're talking about this because I was just writing about this in the chapter. But there was a woman who I thought I want to hire her as a coach. And she was a woman who I had just seen online. And I got on the call with her. And at the time, again, I was drowning in my own stories, right? About, oh, poor me. And even though I was making good money and I was doing well, I was still trapped in this mindset, this limiting mindset of I'm not really worth this, right? I can't really grow from here. And I was still stuck in a very cheap mindset, right? So I was living in like this dingy apartment that might as well have been a fraternity house. There were like 100 people living there in Tel Aviv. And I was sitting in my kitchen and I had a call with this woman and she told me how her program could teach me how to, automate my sales and build out my packages and do all these things. And then I said, okay, well, what's the price? And she said $600. And I was like shocked. I was like, $600? I was like, this woman thinks that she deserves for me to spend $600 on her. This is ridiculous, whatever. And I hung up the phone. And of course, I went to everybody in my life and complained to everybody about how this coach had asked for $600. And I was like, no wonder so many people, fail at coaching businesses. It's because they don't have the money to afford to be a part of it. So months go by and nothing changes, right? I'm still frustrated. I'm still not making enough money I'm still stuck in this crappy mindset, right? Nothing changes. And then I realized that, Lena, what if you just, instead of focusing on the risk of investing in yourself and in paying the money, what's the risk of staying where you are right now? What's the risk of continuing to be in this mindset, this limiting mindset, right? To feel like you never really have enough, to feel like you're drowning in client work. How long can you continue to do that? And I realized that was a much bigger risk than stepping out of my comfort zone and making changes. So coincidentally, because this is how the universe likes to work, another coach kind of fell into my lap. I read about her. I thought, wow, this is the woman. Like, she can change my life. She can teach me how to build this business. By the way, you guys, for those who are listening, all of the big goals that she had hit that I was so impressed with at the time, today are, in my mind, very small goals. Okay, so again, she was not a million steps ahead of me. She was just like 2 or 3 steps ahead of me. But I was so impressed. I had the call with her, sat at the same table. She gave me the price. The price was $10,000. $10,000. But instead of freaking out and calling everybody I knew and complaining about poor me, I said, Lena, you have to take ownership of where you are. You have to take ownership of where you want to be. And you have to realize that you are worth investing in. You are worth this. And so I went to the bank. I asked for my first ever loan of $10,000 and I got the loan. And that's how I paid back my coach. And within 4 months of working with her, I had already made back, multiple what I had invested in her. And that's when I realized that I was standing in my own way with that first coach, right? I just had to look outside of the box. I had to see that there were other options. There are other ways to perceive what's possible for you. And when I was able to stop fearing everything and instead seeing everything as an opportunity to grow, I started taking advantage and really listening to these opportunities when they came to me. So that was the first big, again, a shock to the system, right? So that was like a big shift that I had to make, that I had to put myself in that uncomfortable situation to realize that anything was possible, right? And sometimes you have to take really scary steps forward in order to jump 10 steps ahead. So that was the first time. And after that, it was just relentless. I love taking risks.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. I love that story. And I think too, because so many of us, well, I shouldn't say so many of us, I have noticed in my own life and then in other entrepreneurs who have invested in coaches or programs that are pushed them way outside of there. Because if I heard you right, you said the first coach you were freaking out about was $600.
Yes.
And then this next one was 10,000, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
I want to make sure I heard that correctly. So
Crazy.
when people hear it, they might think, well, why would you pay 10,000 versus, the 600 that you want? I would imagine it's because you decided that coach was the one, the 10,000. Right. But also sometimes do you find, and maybe you find this with people you work with too, or who even come to you, but then don't decide to work with you right away. Sometimes the pain in the moment or the timing is just not enough or just not right. You just have to really feel it or come to that realization as you did of, what would be worse, staying where I am or making this really scary investment? And sometimes it takes, getting to the point where it's like, it's either so painful or not even physical pain or just like you just can't go on anymore, or you've hit your limit, et cetera. And it makes you decide that you have to do something, again, like your move to Tel Aviv or something else that really pushes you outside of your comfort zone. So for everyone listening, I believe, obviously, Lena believes in investing in a coach or a program or something that really works for you. I believe the same, but sometimes you just won't do it until whatever that pain looks like is enough for you to cross that line. Do you think?
Yeah, 100%. And something else that I would just love to add to that is that what I've always found, because at this point, like I'm kind of a coaching junkie. Like I love coaches. I love mentors. I hire them all the time. And what I find though, is that the coaches and mentors who I invest more money in, I get such better results because I have skin in the game. I'm so committed to that experience. And I know now, looking back on it, I'm sure that if I had worked with that $600 coach, would I really have invested, all the time and energy? Would I really have put in such a big effort to make the money back? I wouldn't have, right? So I love high stakes because it means higher results, right? So just wanted to add that.
Do you think too, and actually I think this is the perfect segue into how to attract clients who can actually afford you. So from the other side of it, as a coach or entrepreneur, getting the clients who will make the investment, do you think also that we need to, from that other side, if say you are the coach, et cetera, know that or feel comfortable with having a higher price, et cetera, because you know that the client will get great return on their investment. We need to be comfortable in that as well. Like you said, not just charging the $600 or whatever it is, just because you think that's comfortable for your potential clients.
Right, exactly. And a lot of the time when people hear, just as an example, that you charge $600, let's say for a 6-month coaching program, you know what they're going to think? They're going to think, what's wrong with her, right? Why is it so cheap? And so realize that your prices reflect how you feel about yourself, right? And the value that you see from within. And people are going to model that. People are going to respond well to that. So yeah, definitely that your pricing reflects who you are and where you stand and how you can really serve people. And the right people are going to see the value in that.
That's right. So one of the things you have on your website, another thing that I really love is, as I mentioned, how to attract clients who can actually afford you. And you speak about 4 types of clients we attract over and over again, and about the fact that there's one ideal from those 4 types. If I'm reading that correctly, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
that there's one ideal out of the 4 types that we usually attract that we should pay attention to. So everyone, I'm going to make sure I have a link to this. You'll be able to see it from Lena. It's much more information in the course, but I wanted us to talk about what are those 4 types of clients that we tend to attract over and over again?
Yeah, so it's so interesting. I work with all kinds of clients in all kinds of industries, but pretty much for everybody who's a coach or a consultant or a service provider, they seem to attract 4 types of clients over and over and over again. And these could be clients or they could just be leads, so potential clients, right? Mm-hmm. But these are the 4. And I see so many entrepreneurs who are so huge-hearted and excited, giving so much of their time and effort to all 4 of these kinds of people, when really only one of them is going to succeed. And only one of them is going to pay you high ticket with happiness and with grace and with appreciation, right? So it's really, really important to be able to identify who are these 4 core people, and how do you identify the 3 that you shouldn't be putting in so much time and effort to, and the 1 that you should be putting all of your eggs into, because that's ultimately what's going to make the biggest difference for your business, for your relationship with them, and also for their end results. So the first person who I know that we all see, and a lot of coaches like to joke about this especially, but these are the people who I like to call the cheapos. So these are the people who from day one are completely shocked by your prices, right? They try to nickel and dime you. They are clearly experiencing some kind of deep-rooted money block, right? And on the outside, they might seem really sweet, but deep down, they're struggling with a lot of insecurities that are preventing them from investing in themselves financially, but also emotionally and time-wise, right? So let's say that even if this person does pay you, let's say your program is $10,000, even if they pay you, they're going to remind you about how badly they feel about that decision every single time that they talk to you. They're going to be worrying every single minute of the day, how am I going to be making this money back? And so ultimately, because they're so caught up in their own fears and insecurities, they're not going to get results. And you are going to feel like a bad coach, even though most of the time it has no reflection of you. And you can also tell, by the way, you guys, when you're having calls, potential calls with people who want to join your program who fall into this category, you can tell from the questions they ask if they are going to be a cheapo client, okay? If they really emphasize how stressed they are about paying the money, how quickly are they going to be able to make it back? People who seem really, really stressed about those things, you really want to avoid those people and simply share with them that you don't think that they're the best fit for your program, but you wish them the best of luck.
I think a great thing that you mentioned too there for us to catch is that they might still pay you. So it's not just cheapo that they decide not to pay, right? As you said, they might go ahead and invest that $10,000, but then they can still end up being the client that brings you down, basically.
Exactly. So it's just not worth it either way. It's way better to identify them from the beginning and just tell them that it's not a good fit. So the second person who we tend to see over and over and over again is what I like to call the excuse maker. So these are the clients who don't make so much progress while they're working with you because most of the time they're really stuck in victim mode. So maybe they're still in a 9-to-5, or they're having drama with their parents, or there's always going to be some big excuse for why they aren't keeping up with their work during the program and why they aren't making progress. And so what's interesting about these people, they're often very charismatic. So they're very fun, they're funny, they're fun clients to talk to, right? But at the end of the day, you're not going to get a good testimonial because they're not going to get the results because they're caught up and everything else going on in their lives. And ultimately, when they finish the program, they're going to realize that they didn't make any tangible progress, and they're going to blame you for that. So while on the surface, they may seem okay, you might think, oh, well, they're just going at their own pace. If people are full of excuses for why they can't or won't or shouldn't or didn't do X, Y, and Z, the things that you laid out for them in order for them to reach their goals, then they're not going to be the right fit for you, right? So it's really, really important for you guys to understand from the beginning that these people, while they might seem okay, ultimately you don't want them in your program. So they're already in your program, try to push them, get them through, get them results. But if you're just thinking of onboarding them, then you might want to pause it where it's at and tell them that it might not be a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
The third one that I see over and over and over again is what I like to think of as the dissatisfied. And what's so unfortunate about this is that these people, there is so much potential. So these clients are typically very type A. They're very hardworking. They're very competitive. You enjoy working with them because they actually do constantly reach major milestones, right? And they go above and beyond to complete the tasks that you've set out for them. And they really push themselves to step out of their comfort zones if you tell them to do that, right? So in that way, these are great clients to have. The problem is that because they're so overly harsh on themselves and their partners and their businesses and everything else going on in their life, and they're constantly expecting more, they're going to ultimately expect the same from you. So even though you yourself are going to go above and beyond to do everything for them, to push them, right, to making sure that they're reaching their goals and beyond, ultimately for them, it'll never be enough. And that's going to be reflective in the testimonial that they write for you and how they speak about your program afterward and the relationship that you continue to have with them. So most of the time, the dissatisfied, some clients are re-signers, right? So I've had clients in my programs who have literally worked with me nonstop for more than 2 years now. But these people do not re-sign because they just don't feel like what you did, no matter how much you did, was enough.
How do we spot those people beforehand? Because those people, the other people you kind of, you mentioned, it feels like we might be able to get a sense just from maybe, the first call with them or kind of feeling it out. But these people, the type A who might not, are these people who we just have to know that they're never going to be satisfied and move on from them, like you said, when they don't sign? Or is there a way to sort of see the red flags beforehand?
So I think one of the biggest red flags that I see is, let's say when you're on a sales call with them and you're learning more about them and their business, you can kind of tell where they're at with this depending on the goals that they share with you. So typically people who are dissatisfied have really, really extremely high goals. While on the one hand, that's very inspiring. You yourself as the entrepreneur, as the person helping them get there, should be able to tell if that's a realistic timeline or not, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say somebody comes into your business and last year, they just started their business and they made $100,000. Amazing. Now they're coming to your program and they say, I expect to make $1 million from the next 3 months of working with you. That's a sign that these people might be very hungry, which is great, very ambitious, but they're never actually going to be satisfied. So like you said, these are for sure harder to tell. And oftentimes these are really great clients to work with because you see tangible results. But ultimately, I would say, well, these three are definitely clients you don't want. This one, if you had to have one of those three, would be the one that you would want. Mm-hmm. So they're not the worst of the three, but it's harder to tell. But you have to be in tune with their attitude and seeing if what they're expecting from you in the program is unrealistic or not.
Okay, got it. And yeah. Number 4.
And 4, thank God for number 4. So number 4 are the believers. These are the clients that you guys want, okay? These are the clients who are going to trust the process. They're going to respect your time and rates. They're going to appreciate your expertise. And they're really going to enjoy your role within their growth, okay? So these are people who aren't worried about spending money in order to change their lives, okay? They really, really value their own personal development and they see it as priceless. They respect themselves, okay? And these are also the kind of clients similar to what we spoke about just a second ago. These people are going to take 2 steps ahead, even when you just help them to take 1, right? So they're very committed to their success. And instead of viewing the world through this place of limitations, right? All of these things standing in my way and excuses. Instead, these people have a really clear mindset of abundance and they know that anything is truly possible for them. So what I also really love about these people is that they're not complainers, right? They really appreciate every single opportunity and every single step along the way. Whereas other people in the 3 other categories are going to find reasons for why things don't work or why things went wrong. And they're going to focus on this. These people, on the other hand, are very naturally ambitious and overachieving, but they're also extremely coachable and respectful toward you. And these clients, the way that I like to identify these clients is when I get on a call with them, I look at 2 different I look at 2 different things. So one of those things that I really look at is this a woman or is this a man who I would hang out with, who I would be friends with? Is this somebody who I can laugh with? That's extremely important. It doesn't matter how compatible you and this person might be skills-wise. If you guys don't get along and have a similar sense of humor or personality or can't get along on that level, it's going to be very difficult. So the first thing is you want to make sure, for me in my experience, because I am bubbly and warm and I like to laugh and smile and whatever, it's important for me that the person who I'm speaking to is also like that. And it's very clear from that if they respect what I do. And also you can tell just by what they've already done. So even if up until this point they've only gotten to a certain level, you've already seen that they have a track record of sticking through something, right? Of actually doing the work, of staying focused, of being organized. But at the same time, they realize that there's room to grow, and they're really appreciative of your guidance with that. So what's difficult, and you guys, this comes from practice, I guess. You have to really practice seeing what the difference is between the dissatisfied people and the believers. But if you can find the believers, you'll know it. These are people who, again, seem like friends of yours, people who you can really coach, and people who are ready to do whatever it takes to reach their goals. And they're just excited about what lays ahead.
Would you say, too, that it's important for us to remember in all of those things, and whenever we're trying to connect with our ideal clients or having these conversations, that you as the entrepreneur get to choose the kinds of clients you want to work with as much as they're choosing you as a coach or a business to go to or a service, et cetera. And I ask that because I don't know if you see this, but sometimes as the entrepreneur or the coach, we forget that we get to choose also. It's not just sitting there waiting for someone to choose us, right? You get to decide, just as you've laid out for us, this person might work well to work with me, this person won't. It's not just a take anything that comes kind of thing.
Yes, that is so massive. And what's interesting is, I'll say a few months ago, it's interesting that you said that, we were getting a lot of clients, which was awesome. I would say a handful of them were people who I would like totally be friends with in real life, and they were amazing clients. And the other, well, I knew that I could help them on the business front. Our personalities weren't necessarily compatible, and that was hindering our work together. And it was around the same time that we had this idea of, well, why does Lena have to be the only coach on the team? What if we brought on other LEC coaches, other Lena Elkins coaching coaches? So that's what we actually have today. And it was created for that exact reason. So if people join our program, and even if what they need to learn is exactly what we teach, but I don't think that will necessarily be compatible personality-wise, I know that I have these 3 other coaches where maybe actually I really know, and by the way, these are coaches who are, trained on our team and are awesome business coaches in their own right with their own experience. I know, well, actually, instead of this person working with me directly, maybe they would be a better fit for this coach. And then they can go through most of the program with that person while still receiving, the group coaching aspects and other parts from me. But that ends up being such a better result, right? Because they're getting the actual content that we teach, but in a way that really resonates with them, from a person who they really connect to. And we see it makes such a big difference in the results of the clients.
That's so smart. And I think that's such a great idea, as you mentioned. Well, one, it's helping you expand your business, right? But then, like you said, you don't have to be the only person, the go-to person for everything. Exactly. Yeah, it's changed everything. How big is your company now? Did you say you have 11 people? How many people in your company now?
11 or 12. We have
11.
Yeah, something like that. There's me and then the other coaches. There are 3 coaches. We have 3 sales people. We have tech people and ads people and people.
That's amazing. And just how many years has it been?
It's been a little over, no. It's been a little over 2 years in the coaching business.
Right, in the coaching business. That's excellent, Lena. So would you say also that, how would you say that people we know the different types of ideal clients, or not ideal, the different types of clients and the one ideal client. But also, how would you say, maybe for you, has been the best way to find clients in general? Has it been people seeing examples of your work and what you've been able to create in your business? Has it been referrals? Has it been a combination? For anyone who's wondering, well, how do I find my ideal client?
Yeah, it's a good question. I always recommend to people in the beginning, you don't really need to get into funnel building and automation or anything like that first. If you're really just trying to get your first round of clients, I am such a big believer in focusing local. So there are people in your town or in your city right now who are waiting to hear from you. They need you. And yes, that goes for coaches and consultants as well. But even think if you were able to host a small local event, right, at a local bar or something and do a talk, that's going to generate a bunch of interest around your business and your work that you didn't even know about before. So speaking of where we get our clients now, though, one of them is definitely speaking. So we do speaking all around the world, which is really fun. So a lot of our clients come from that. And we're also heavy in the paid media game. So Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Google ads, things like that. And we also have a Facebook group. So a lot of our clients have come from our Facebook group, Millennial Go-Getters, over the years. And what's so interesting is that a lot of people, they may have already been in, let's say, our Facebook group for a year. And we only first hear from them when they apply to work with us after a year, right? So they have the opportunity to be a part of our community, to learn from us, to learn to trust us, to become a part of the LEC family, right? And only then will they call and want to work with you. But that's often worth it, right? And also Instagram is a big place for us as well. So I would say mostly paid media, the Facebook group, speaking, and yeah. Oh, and also Forbes. I should say Forbes. I'm a member of the Forbes Coaches Council, and so a lot of people read my articles there and come from us.
You're a member of the Forbes. What did you say? I didn't hear you.
The Forbes Coaches Council.
Oh, nice. Okay, great. Excellent. So great. Thank you for sharing that. Different ways that people can just think about that you can sort of get exposure and connect with people. What would you say that entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
I think it's what I said before, in that I am the source of my own limitations, right? So anything that I think I cannot do, at the end of the day, if I really look internally and examine the issue and examine the roadblock, I can find ways, whether it's mindset or more tangible than that, to overcome that, right? And what I also love about entrepreneurship and being a woman is the fact that no one gives me a salary, right? Nobody gets to decide what I wear to work, and nobody gets to decide how much I make. So it's really given me the self-agency and the freedom to build a life and business that I really love without needing anybody else's permission, and just being able to show up and ultimately get paid for being my most, true and vibrant self unapologetically. It just gives you an amount of freedom and confidence that I don't think I would have been able to get otherwise. So, yeah.
In closing, what would you say if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally? Who would that be, and what would you say?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. Is it cheesy to say my mom?
No. Awesome. No answer is cheesy.
My mom is amazing. Her name is Janet. She's a boss bitch when it comes to her career. Mm-hmm. And that's just, she was always the breadwinner in our family. She always supported us. She was always ambitious, going after the next thing. She's been through some really tough stuff, and we've just been able to see her overcome it in such incredible, inspiring ways. And so whenever people ask me, like, where did you get your entrepreneurial spirit? Totally my mom, even though she's not an entrepreneur, but she is just so ambitious and type A and unapologetically her. And I just love her for that.
Excellent. What would you say to her if you could tell her, and I'm sure you do, but if you could tell her just, what you appreciate about her support for you?
Yeah. I think what I would say to her is that she didn't realize it, but she was inspiring us in so many ways without even realizing that we were paying attention. So I think I would say to her that, Mom, we do notice, you are seen, you are appreciated, you are loved, and you are so, so, so enough. I think that's something that's always been very hard for her and for a lot of women, feeling like they're enough, whether it's as a mom or as an employee or anything. So she is beyond enough, and nobody else could have done her job better.
Excellent. Beautiful, Lena. I love that. Now, tell us, what are the ways that we can support you? Tell everyone, you mentioned earlier, and I forgot to go back to it, about that you were working on a book. To tell us if you want to tell us about that, about your website, social media, all that good stuff.
Yeah, totally. I have no exciting updates about the book, but it's going to be called No Turning Back Now. Mm-hmm. And you guys can obviously find me at lenaelkins.com. You're welcome to join my Facebook group, Millennial Go-Getters, and follow me on Instagram, LenaElkins18. And if you guys wanted to get the blueprint where I walk through how to get clients who can naturally afford you, you guys can get that on my website, and I'm sure I can provide you the link as well.
Perfect. Yes, I will have links to everything. Please send me if there's a direct link. I think I might have it, but send me if you have something else you want me to put a direct link for that. Everyone, I'm sure, will want to know about it. Lena has great information and resources on her website, lenaelkins.com, which we will also link to. Lena, thank you so much. This was so fantastic. As we mentioned before we started, you're in Tel Aviv. I'm in Bulgaria. We're sharing this all over the world. I'm just like technology, loving it today.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you so much, Elayne. This was so fun.
Thank you. And thank you for being so open and sharing not only your tips, but your story as well. I know it's going to be really helpful for people.
Good. I'm happy. Thanks so much.
Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
The one piece of advice would be to make decisions from the perspective of the person that you want to be, not the person that you are today. That's how you'll get there faster.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Lena. To find out more about her, to find out about her Millennial Facebook group that you can join, to find out more about what she's up to and how to get in touch with her, just go to supportissexy.com, go to that search icon at the top, and type in Lena, Lena. Her show notes page will pop up with links and resources, and again, ways to get in touch with her. Supportissexy.com, and just search Lena. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you know how much I appreciate you. As I always say, it wouldn't be the same without you. Until we chat again, I want you to always remember, support is sexy, and having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.